Hey, this is Andrew Brown, and what I want to show here is submitting for week one. I'm going to try to do my best to always shoot a video so that you have an idea of what I'm looking in terms of submissions. We're going to go down to homework submission. We can see we have a lot of stuff here in week one. We have the GovTech data primer, everything like that. Also, just consider that we can tell whether you've watched the videos or not. So make sure that you have gone through and watched the videos, as I will kind of be watching that as well. There was a lot of interesting stuff in this particular week, and I'm going to go over here into week one submissions, and we'll go ahead and fill in the form. And so I'm going to describe what I'm looking for in here. This video should appear. And so there's a lot of things we did. We didn't even put everything that we did in here. But there are two things that I really want to know about, and I am seeing one missing. So just give me a moment to add it back in here. There we go. So I've just updated it here. And so there are a few fields here. And I want to point out that if it's not required, you don't have to fill it in. But if you can, that would be really, really good. But let's take a look at what we have. So the first is the backend API implementation. So what I'm looking for is to know what it is that you did differently, or maybe all you did was implement the missing endpoints or whatever. But like in here, I'm just going to say that, re-implemented the entire, so I would say I wrote the tech spec from scratch for the backend. I re-implemented the backend API. So I used, or we can just keep it nice and simple, but I used Golang and Gin. Okay. Now, I'm still using Japanese, but if you're using a different target language, you might want to describe that, you had to do something different in order to accommodate the backend for your case. I would just say one thing is that, I noticed that the original implementation had inconsistent API paths, so I had to correct. So I normalized the APIs so they are consistent. So that's definitely something that I did. I used Ruby and RSpec to write a test suite to ensure the code generated was accurate, did what was expected. One thing that I surprised was I used Windsurf, and the approach I used to build the backend was to feed the entire tech spec, and have it create the entire back end in one go. However, when I was generating test code, I found that the AI discovered many errors from the backend API generation. I ensured to, because I detailed the endpoints detailed exactly what I expected back as JSON output. I have strong confidence that the tests generated are accurate. I did not have time to use the app with a front end, so I'll be continuing to use the existing Flash backend. And what I did, and if people end up doing this, is in order to use the Flask backend originally provided, I had to go back a commit to be able to pull the commit to be able to have all API endpoints working, because it really depends on what your goal is. So like maybe you just re-implemented those ones, but like because I already implemented the backend, I want to continue on the Flask one. I went to the commit history. So if I just go over to GitHub here for a moment, right, and we go to the ExamPro repo over here, you can see I have a lot of different repos here, and we click into the free Gen AI Bootcamp. You know, I had ripped out some of those endpoints, and so in order to get it, I just went here before the changes. So maybe to this commit, I can't really remember which one. And then I went and browsed the files there. Actually, I think I go back here. If you click on this, right, you can browse the repo and see if the endpoint exists or not. But you can also just download the code base from here. And I do this in the next week videos. But that would be something you'd have to work around. And that's one of our little traps that we set out there to make sure, because if people, you know, I purposely put this backend in a broken state. So you either have to fix them or you have to make a new one, or you have to point out that you pulled out the old code to do it. For the front end, I didn't do anything for this week. I mean, I obviously generated the original one, so I'm going to pretend that I did it this week, and I would just say, I used Lovable. So like, I wrote a front end tech spec, and I fed the I used Lovable, and I had Lovable dev to implement the front end. It did an okay job. However, it was struggling. Oh, sorry, but I would say like the workflow was frustrating. So I downloaded the code into Windsurf and finished the implementation by hand. I would say Lovable, if I had paid version, had the paid version of Lovable, maybe through 200 iterations, chat interactions, I could have completed it. However, having the API the backend API code in the same repo in Windsurf allowed it to cross-reference code from each. Okay. Right, then we have the vocab importer. Now I did this with Brian, and so I actually wanted to do this. I didn't do it myself. Well, no, sorry. I actually did do this, but I never recorded it. It was before the start of the bootcamp. But, you can make one that's based on the vocab importer. So, I created a vocab importer using Gradio. I really like Gradio. And I focused on Core 2000 generation, right? So like, and it could have been like, I focused, so I already had the vocab list I extracted out of an Anki deck. So my vocab importer categorizes the words into groups. However, I could not get good thematic grouping using Claude Sonnet 3.5. So maybe this task is better left to humans. And so I did not complete this project. Okay. For the OPA implementation, so this is something that I don't care if you're able to get it fully working, but just tell me how far did you get, right? So I would say, I was able to get the Ollama container running. When it came to the mega service, I had issues. The code technically worked, but the handler implementation requires more thinking. So if I can finish that implementation, I would have a working, what do you call it? If there's an implementation, I would have a working mega service, right? So, that was the issue I had. Like, I'd probably be a bit more descriptive than this, but, I'm just trying to get this kind of done so you have a general idea of what it. If you have considerations, exceptions, accommodations, I've added this in the pre-week, but, if you've been having any issues and you need me to consider this when I grade, then, please do write in here. In terms of when I will grade this stuff, it's kind of hard to say because we have a lot of users, but I will probably be doing some grading for some folks. But as the bootcamp continues to other weeks, you'll see more aggressive grading for me covering basically everybody. But I'm going to go ahead and submit this. And so now I'm submitted. And so there you go.